good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to this episode of the Global Edge Leaders webinar. And joining us this evening is none other than Cary Prejean. He is a consultant that helps businesses. Cary, can you introduce yourself to our viewers and let them know a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Okay. My education was in accounting. Got my CPA and all back in the '82. And basically what I do is I help businesses scale their business. I also help them, there's two things that you hear from business owners a lot. I want to manage by the numbers and I want to take my business to the next level. But most don't really have a good appreciation of what that means. For them, managing by the numbers a lot of times is they can manage by their checkbook, by how much cash they have, which is flying blind for the most part. So one of the first things we do is help get them what I call actionable financial data in terms of weekly dashboards, so they can look at their KPIs on a regular basis. They can see the dashboards are designed to show you something's not working in real time rather than find out next month that last month was the problem. Does that make sense? Also help them look at their financial statements on a regular basis, on a monthly basis, and educate them on what their financial statements are saying about their business. Because that's what financial statements are. They're like report cards. They tell you about your financial strength, your liquidity, your profitability, and your efficiency. And if you don't know how to read your financial statements, which my experience is most small to medium-sized business owners don't, you're somewhat of a liability to your business. So what is this thing to take your business to the next level, right? For a lot of business owners, it's like more revenue. Well, we're going to sell more, okay? But, so really what happens with most business owners is they're really good at identifying possibilities and turning that into revenue, right? They start a business, they can do that, they're profitable, they start to hire people, and they build a business, but at some point, the business, the day-to-day management of the business consumes all their time. In fact, they're working a lot of hours, they can't take any time off, and they have to step in and rescue you, save the day throughout, all day, every day. So in other words, they're not really a business owner, they're a business operator. So what I do is I help them to identify what are your critical functions and have your employees who perform those functions develop a process for how that function is carried out. What I need from the owner is what are the results you want to see? What are the consistent results you want to see from this process? Have the employees design the process that'll get you there, test it. And once it's tested and you get consistent results, the owner can then step back and focus on things like fun possibilities, building strong relationships, turning that into revenue. So eventually what happens over a period of time is the owner is eventually a true business owner rather than a business operator. So they can focus their time on what they do best, what their most valuable contribution to the business is. They get a good feel for the business by looking at weekly dashboards, and longer term, I help them design their business into the future, which sounds like, how do you do that? Well, if you don't design it, all the forces that buffet your business will push your business somewhere you probably won't like. So how do you purposely design your business in the future? Well, that's with strategic planning, being clear on what you want, what you expect, and what I work with is satisfaction. In other words, what's going to satisfy you? What's going to be enough action? That's my definition of satisfaction. What's enough action in revenue, profits, the time you can take off, as many details as you can about your business. Anyway, kind of long-winded, but that's what I do.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for sharing, because you've sparked quite a number of questions in my mind. The first of which I can hear everyone on the phone and watching right now screaming, particularly those who say, if I own a business that is quote unquote dependent on me, maybe it's a creative business, maybe I'm an artist, and if I'm not there, the business doesn't run. How do I grow that business? How do I scale it? Because you mentioned an element of having employees and them running the business. So how does someone transition from being the business to something whereby he or she doesn't have to be there?
Right. Again, what I was talking about earlier, you want to become a true business owner, not a business operator. And the way you do that is to have a system of processes that run your business. And for most small to medium-sized businesses, you need a manager, 2, maybe 3, depending on the size of the business, that can manage the business simply by having the employees follow the process, follow the processes that will perform the critical functions and make the business run on its own, to where the owner isn't having to step in all the time. And listen, I get, some business owners, there's some kind of an ego payoff in that they get to be the guy that comes in and saves the day. But what they eventually find themselves in, they're trapped as basically a glorified W-2 employee of the business that has to spend 80 to 100 hours a week. They can't take any time off. They get frustrated. Why don't employees get it? And, the bad news is that basically your employees, quote, don't get it because you've trained them to be that way. You've trained them to take things only so far and then have the boss come in and rescue everything. Because that's the way, let me say it this way. People treat you the way you've trained them to treat you. So if you train your employees to treat you as you got to save the day, you got to have the fix, you're the only one who has the answer, because in the past, people have tried to step up and solve things. And instead of being thanked by the owner for solving it, why'd you do it that way? That's not the way I'd have done it. Why'd you take that? That cost too much money. That wasn't efficient. That wasn't the way I do it. Right? And it's a lot of times it's in things that the owner hasn't been trained in. I've seen owners step in and mess up accounting processes so bad because they don't know accounting, but it's the fallacy is because I own the business, because I started the business, I'm the best person to manage the business. And if you look at the personality or what drives entrepreneurs to succeed, that skill set is the opposite of what you want in a good manager. A good entrepreneur is going to see possibilities. They're going to take action. They're going to be impatient. They see opportunity, where those people see risk. They don't want a lot of rules and guidelines. And they like a change of pace. They like a fast pace. They like to change gears. They're always looking for that next shiny object. A good manager, that's the other thing. Well, most entrepreneurs are not good team players. They're not there to be on a team. They're there to lead the team or have a team follow them. Whereas good managers are generally better team players. They're generally somewhat reserved, whereas entrepreneurs are very outgoing. They're good. They can get to know you in 15 minutes. Plus, a manager is going to want nice, steady pace. They don't want chaos. They don't want changing gears. They want everything. What a good manager, and I've spoken to several really great managers, and they all say they want boring. They want steady. They want repeatable results just chugging it out day after day after day. Whereas that drives most entrepreneurs crazy. They also want a lot of rules, guidelines, processes. This is the way we do things. Whereas the entrepreneur typically is like, don't fence me in with all that stuff. I'll figure it out when I get there. Don't tell me how to do it. So you look at the skill sets and they're opposite. Being a great entrepreneur, really, which is your most valuable thing you can contribute to your company, makes you a bad manager. So don't try and be a good manager. You will diminish your entrepreneurial skills and never really be a good manager, right? So be a great entrepreneur, get some good managers to help you run the business so that you don't have to work 80 to 100 hours a week and be able to take time off, et cetera.
Yeah, well, how do you manage to convince those types of business owners to relinquish that control of the operations, of letting the manager handle the day-to-day, as opposed to maybe having a mindset of, why am I paying them all that money? I can do it myself. Or maybe asking them to learn how to do some of these skills. Maybe they have to take a course, or they have to rewire their brain. How do you normally handle those two issues?
Well, yeah. The main thing is to show them like the way you do things does not work. My word is that your accounts payable is one client that I've been working with about 3 years now. When I first started working with him, he was spending half his time in the warehouse, screaming at the guys in the warehouse, and the other half time he was wrestling with the accounting people on accounts payable, right? And my commentary was like, your accounts payable system is dysfunctional, and you need somebody who knows warehouse well to run your warehouse. He's like, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by dysfunctional? I said, does not function well. He goes, no, my system's fine. You guys just don't know how to read the numbers. I was like, okay, accountants don't know how to read the numbers, and your system's fine. It's all these errors that keep popping up because the system works so well. Is that what you're trying to tell me? So eventually he got to see that, yeah, maybe he doesn't know anything, or he was never trained to design an accounts payable system. His background was in architecture, and he's an e-commerce owner. So now, for the last, I don't know, year and a half, maybe 2 years, we've gotten it down to where he spends a half an hour on a Tuesday evening looking at the bills to be paid. They set up the ACH in the bank. He hits the approval process in a button. Vendors get paid. He doesn't have all the chaos that he had going on. He was trying to run the payables with the accounting department. So it's a matter of showing them there's an easier way. You're doing it the hard way. A lot of times, just getting them to realize that you are the bottleneck. And that's the biggest thing I have in working with business owners, to get them to see that they are the bottleneck. If you have a business that requires you to work a lot of hours, you can't take any time off, there's constant breakdowns, you're always having to run in and save the day, you're the bottleneck.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, there's two types of people. There are those people that actually enjoy what they do, and if you tell them not to do it, they can't live without the doing, because they don't know how to do anything else, and then that gets in the way of the business. And based on what you're saying, they just need to be cancelled, or from your perspective, to see with their own two eyes that what you're doing is actually having a negative effect on your dream, on your endeavor, and therefore you have to make a hard decision, carry on with your passion and fail the business, or make a few changes and let it thrive. And I guess that's sometimes a very bitter pill to swallow. Having a thriving business, but then as active as you want to be.
Yeah, it's an issue of trust. Their business is like their baby. They started it, they've nurtured it, they've built it, and it's really hard to turn over caring for that business, that baby, to employees who, from their perspective so far, are just there for a paycheck, right? So again, start with building processes. And it's the confidence that the owner gets in the employees when they see they're carrying out the process consistently, producing consistent results. And the more processes that come in, the owner can step away more and more. It's not this, and again, I don't ask business owners just turn over the business to the employees on day one. It is a process it's a process of building the processes that will have the business run on its own. And you can be a true business owner.
Yeah, so I know there's some people watching and listening right now who are saying, okay, this is very good, but how do I know what I'm doing wrong? As far as I'm concerned, everything seems right, but some things aren't going the way they should, and I can't tell what exactly is going wrong. So what advice, or what, can I say, metrics would somebody look at to determine whether or not they are treading in the right direction?
Right. There's a reason that even the world's best athletes have coaches, right? Most business owners don't have any coaches. They don't have any mentors. They don't have any outside observers. And the reason the best athletes in the world have coaches is because a coach can see you in the middle of your performance. You can't. You can't see yourself performing. Michael Jordan, as great as he was, couldn't see himself in the middle of making layups, dunking the ball, all that kind of stuff. His coach could. And what's interesting about Michael Jordan is, even at his peak, the Bulls had won 2 national championships in a row. And then the office of the Bulls was saying, making comments like they didn't know if Phil Jackson was going to be there the next year, the head coach. Well, Jordan came out and said, if Phil Jackson's not back next year, I'm not back. He put them on notice, don't take away my coach. So again, Phil Jackson was back, but most business owners want to try and figure it out themselves, right? And there are distinctions that are out there that they can't see. Not that they aren't there. You can't see them, mainly because we all have a perspective. We all have a narrative we live by that tells us what to think, what to act, how to react, what emotion to be in. It's that language that's always there. And again, right now, people are going, what's he talking about? What's he talking about? That's the narrative that's telling you what to think, what to feel. And it goes to this filtering of makes sense, doesn't make sense, like it, don't like it, agree with it, disagree with it, good, bad, right, wrong, etc. All right? And then the whole ocean of assessments that it gets filtered through. So it's that narrative that is going to, let me put it this way, entrepreneurs have a narrative that empowers them to do things, right? To see the opportunities, to turn them into revenue. But their narrative also blinds them to certain distinctions about what it is to be a good manager, how to build a team, processes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So those are distinctions that are out there, but until you can give them the distinction in a way they can see it, it's like it doesn't exist. That's why you have people have the same event, but they all have a different experience. The obvious one is a roller coaster. Some people love it, some people hate it, some people are kind of, and I'll take it or leave it. But it's not the event; it's the interpretation that a language gives us that gives us different experiences. Same thing in, well, really all of life, but in business for sure. Your narrative is going to tell you how to feel, what to think, what to like, what to dislike, etc. And it's a coach that can help you show you what your narrative looks like to everybody else, right? It's hard to see your own narrative. Is that making any sense?
Yeah, it does. And I'm just thinking about when you mentioned a roller coaster, I'm imagining someone in a roller coaster whereby they aren't at the low point, they're now going underground. In other words, their business is in the red. At what point do you tell a business owner that you just have to pack it in now? It's over. What are some indicators that let somebody know, yeah, this is it. There's no way back from it?
Well, yeah, and they drive things into the ground and wind up going bankrupt, or having assets seized and then putting in. Some people get put into involuntary bankruptcy. Yeah, listen, that's kind of a fine-edged sword here, right? It's not really over until you quit. At the same time, there has to be some point you reach at which this isn't working. I have to do something different. I need to close this and do something different. And maybe it's not what you want to do. The contribution you want to be to the world is wrong. The way you're going about it is not working. So before you get to that point, and yes, there is a point where you have overwhelming debt, you've run out of capital, your cash flow is gone. At some point, you will be shut down. Either you'll shut it down or somebody will, your creditors will shut you down. So before you get to that point is to assess, how am I doing? Is what I'm doing effective? Am I producing the results I say I want to produce? Am I producing enough profit to pay my employees, pay my expenses, pay me a decent compensation, and grow the business, right? And it's hard to see sometimes, especially if you've been at it a while, that this dysfunctional part of your business is holding you back. A lot of times it's seen as, well, that's just the way it is. You hear it, well, we can't change our price. We can't raise our prices because, we'll lose customers. I'm not saying that that's never true, but there are ways to raise prices in terms of making sure your customers see the value of what you do, either in the goods you sell or the services you offer. That, well, I guess what I'm saying is, what you don't want to do, well, some businesses do, what you don't want to be is the cheapest price in town, because then everybody you have is there because they're price shopping, right? And as soon as you raise your prices, you're right, you lose some customers. But if you're attracting customers because you provide a superior service or product, they're not going to jump at slight price increases. I'm not talking about raising prices 50% overnight. I'm talking about incremental 3 to 5% price increases every now and then, every 6 to 9 months, raising prices. The people that appreciate the quality of what you offer are going to stay. The price shoppers are going to leave, and goodbye to them. The price shoppers are just they're probably the worst customers. They complain. They always need high level of service and maintenance. And one of the ways to do that is to be really clear about what is it about your business that differentiates you from the crowd. And what I call, a lot of times you hear it's called your individual selling proposition, what I like to call your market dominating position. What is it about you, your business, that separates you from the rest of the herd? What is it about your business that the buying public out there should be coming to you? If you don't know, guess what? They really won't know. You'll look like the rest of the herd. So being clear about what your market, what's different about you, what differentiates you from the crowd, not only do you have to be clear about, your employees have to be clear about, and you want to be clear in your messaging to the general public or whoever your prospective customers are. This is why we're different. It's not what you do. It's what are the concerns you address. What are the results you produce? That's what businesses are looking for. They're not we have superior whatever service. We're better than the rest. Everybody says that. We're top service. We're top whatever. What is it you can say about what you offer that's better than the rest in terms of the concerns that you address in your customers? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. From your perspective, how critical is it in terms of a business? How important is the customer experience for the success of a business? And is it a metric that business owners need to pay attention to?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's how you're in business, right? Is addressing concerns of your customers. If you can do that in a way that they can't get that experience anywhere else, they're going to stay with you, and you can have a premium price. But you have to balance that out with how much does it cost for you to produce that experience? If you're selling something for $100 and it costs you $150 to produce it, you're going to go bankrupt. So there are balances, on both sides of it. You can't just, we're going to do everything to make just this wonderful experience they can't get anywhere else, and we can't charge for it. But we can't charge enough for it to cover our costs. You have to be able to cover your costs plus a profit. So that has to be balanced out. And yes, you want to strive for what can we do that's going to give the customer this experience they can't get anywhere else. That's what you have to be able to articulate and get out there. But you have to weigh that you don't just go overboard and throw everything in the kitchen sink at them to enhance the experience.
Yeah. Well, as we conclude the interview today, I just wanted you to share with us some parting words of wisdom. We've spoken about quite a number of things, but in a sentence or two, in just a few words, for anyone out there that's listening to this particular episode and they are a business owner, what advice would you give them?
Right. My mentor, one of my primary mentors in life, this is about 37 years ago. He said, "Do you want to know the secret to life?" I said, "Absolutely." He said, "It's getting exactly what you want, achieving ultimate satisfaction." I said, "Yeah, that would be great." He said, "Getting everything you want, down to the details." He said, "So how do you get that?" I said, "I don't know, ask for what you want." He goes, "Yeah." I said, "But before that, you really have to know what you want in detail, right? Knowing what you want is more than half the battle. That's 90% of the battle in my book. But it takes time. You're not going to figure it out in a weekend. You're going to figure it out over years. And what you want, what's going to satisfy you in terms of enough action is going to change, is going to evolve over time, especially as you start achieving some of the things you said you want. And part of the process is you're going to find some things you thought you wanted. When you actually achieve them, you really didn't, not that important to you, or it's something you really don't like. And my number one example is when I was a teenager starting to date girls, I thought crazy looked really fun and exciting. Dating crazy girls, wild girls. And it is at first, and then you got to deal with the crazy part. It's not so fun. So, what I learned quickly was I don't like crazy. It's too expensive. So you have to figure out, you have to take some time, probably do some writing. And in fact, you definitely want to write it down. You don't want to just in your head, but you want to write down some of the things. What do you want? What do you want your business to look like in terms of revenue, profits, how much time you can take off? Things I was talking about before, strategic planning. But what kind of employees do you want to have? What kind of culture do you want to have? What's your market area? Do you have one? Are you global, or you have a region? What are the goods and services you want to offer? Are you not offering something you want to offer, and you need to develop that as a product line or a service? Everything you can imagine about what's going to satisfy you. If you had the perfect business, what would it look like right now? What would it look like? What would be here that's not here now? And what's here that wouldn't be here now? Write down specifically as much detail as you can. Know what you want. Knowing what you want exactly, having that down first, it's much easier to go out and get what you want. If you don't know what you want, how are you going to know when you get it? And the thing I always say is, until you declare satisfaction, until you declare what will satisfy you, you will never be satisfied. Most people walk around with, this ain't it. If only my life were more, better, different, I'd be happy. And they never define more, better, or different. And they talk about happy like it's something that's going to find them at some point. But it's happy, unhappy comes and goes all day long. Satisfaction is much more enduring experience and and again, it sounds silly, but more satisfying way to live. You get to live in moods of ambition and gratitude and peace and joy, as opposed to living in resentment and resignation, which are rooted in this is going on and there's nothing I can do about it.
Yeah, well,
that's a long few sentences, but yeah.
Yeah, the point is well taken, and I'm sure there are a lot of people listening that have taken a leaf from basically what you've said. I know they've learned quite a bit. So, Cary, before we let you go, how can people get in touch with you? How can they learn more about your services and how they can find you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, Cary Prejean. It's spelled on the screen. You can also find me at my website. I have two websites. They're both strategic business advisors. One ends in .org. The other one ends in .us. They're both linked in my my LinkedIn profile. You can find me there. You can download. Right now, I have two of my books on the .org website. You can download for free in PDF. You can schedule an appointment or a free consultation through either website. I'm easy to find if you're looking.
Well, that brings us to the end of this webinar. Cary, thank you once again. And for you that have tuned in, that have watched this webinar with us, I hope you've learned quite a bit. Cary's links will be in the description below where you can find him and learn more about his offerings. For us at Global Age Leaders, we offer quite a number of supplementary reading and learning materials that you can find on our website. That is at www.globalageleaders.com. We have different online courses on things like personal branding, public speaking, how to manage negotiations, how to become a board member, and so on and so forth. There's a wealth of knowledge on our website, so please navigate it and learn what you can about leadership and how to be a better business owner. For now, thank you, good morning, good evening, and good night, wherever you are.